Alessandro, you let me know when the live stream is on as well. We are live streaming this event, and that will also live on YouTube. All right, and with that, if everyone's ready, I think we will get started. And now we are going to be talking about labor market integration of refugees and migrants in Sweden. Obviously, a very, very important topic. And with me to discuss that, my name is Charlotte Hallquist, by the way. I'm communications from UNHCR. And with me, I'm not just communications, I'm responsible for communications for UNHCR, Nordics and Baltics. Sorry, it's been a long day. And with me, I have Karin Herry from the Tent Partnership for Refugees, Sweden's country director for Tent Partnerships. I also have Tobias van Trick, apologies for butchering that, head of office for IOM based in Finland. I also have Kajsa Bokvist, who's head of tax at PwC, and a tent member company that is, PwC is a tent member company that is hiring refugees in Sweden. And last but not least, I have Eva Tatarova, apologies again for maybe mispronouncing that, who currently is the program manager for Reskilling Ukraine, Beredskapslyftet as it's called in Swedish, and who actually arrived in Sweden in 2022 and is now currently living in Sweden under temporary protection. So going to give us the perspective from a refugee after we hear from the experts here. So what are we going to be talking about? Labor market integration. So the integration of refugees and migrants in the labor market is essential for their overall integration, as I think we all know, into their host societies. Employment fosters social inclusion, financial independence, and boosts not only self-esteem, but also reduces dependency on social welfare. In Europe, and in particularly in Sweden as well, labor market integration is particularly important because of the critical labor shortages that there actually is. And I think that's something that we don't always think about. We are seeing aging populations, we are seeing declining birth rates, but also more and more a skill mismatch. And there are gaps there that both refugees and migrants can fill these gaps in the labor market with the right support and with the recognition of their skills, because both migrants and refugees bring skills with them. So today we will talk about what refugees experience in terms of integrating into Swedish society, preparing for the labor market, what barriers do they face, and what are both the opportunities and responsibilities for companies and society as a whole for integrating migrants and refugees. How do we shift perception of refugees and migrants to emphasize the power of their inclusion, but also the value of their contribution. And with that, I will hand over to Karin first. Carrie, my paper, apologies, to give us a little bit of an overview. First of all, where are we at? So what are the labor market trends in Sweden, and why should businesses broaden their talent pipeline to include refugees and migrants?
Thank you. I mean, we have a very specific situation actually all over the world. At the same time, we have more people than ever as being refugees or internally displaced, and at the same time, a massive labor shortage all over the world. In Sweden, if you look at just the unfilled positions that are posted on Arbetsförmedlingen, so 115,000 unfilled positions today. Different reports say that 1 out of 5 employers in Sweden can't grow because they simply can't find people to hire. 77% of Swedish employers say they can't find candidates with the right skills, and we have around 300,000 refugees in Sweden. So and a high unemployment rate as well among people with refugee background. And we have to remember, you pointed to something important, and that is skills. We have to remember that being a refugee is something temporary. It's a temporary status. You were someone in your country, you had skills, you had dreams of how you thought your life would turn out. And then you come to Sweden, and I think this is very specific also to Sweden, and then you're just a refugee. So the labor market trends is that we see that it's hard for people with refugee background to enter the Swedish labor market. However, it is a very broad and diverse group of talented people that, first of all, want to work, have the skills to work, but they lack different kinds of contacts, etc. So a great pool of candidates that are often overlooked by companies. And this is a great potential to tap into this unused, or this how should I say, it's warm, right?
Yes, it is.
To tap into this new talent pipeline and to actually fill their needs. So it is two challenges can turn into some kind of opportunity.
Exactly, and I think you talk about there changing that perception, right, of actually what skills and values that both refugees and migrants can bring, right? To also change the perception that welcoming refugees and migrants could be a burden, when in actual fact it can be a resource that is very much needed in Sweden and also in Europe. Now, Tobias, IOM was commissioned by the Swedish government to do a study on the status of Ukrainians in Sweden. And I think what we have seen is often the welcoming, not often, but now the welcoming of Ukrainian refugees had been a little bit of the golden standards, I would say, a different reception than we've seen with some other refugee and asylum seeker groups. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to hear what are the findings of this study, what are the challenges and also opportunities that Ukrainians have faced since their arrival in Sweden.
Yes, thank you. So indeed, I don't have to repeat what you say, that the Swedish government, the Ministry of Justice, asked IOM to do a survey among Ukrainian beneficiaries of temporary protection in Sweden, and actually we are now just finalizing a second survey, so a follow-up survey. So I have some results from that, so that we can also see the development over time. But just in very short, we had phone interviews and then an online form to answer the survey, and we had around 4,700 respondents, which was 19% of the total Ukrainian temporary protection beneficiary population in Sweden. So, and then also in terms of the demographic composition of our sample, it was representative of the total population. And then in the 2024 survey, we had around 3,400 respondents. And so what we found, I think we were looking more broadly than only labor market integration, but I'm mostly focusing on those results now, was that in 2023, 56% of those who are active in the labor market, so who are not too old, not too young, and not studying or prevented from working. So 56% among the Ukrainians were employed already in 2023, and this increased to 66% in 2024, which I understand is maybe a bit higher and faster than among some other refugee or migrant populations. What we also found was that basically, regardless of the education level of those refugees, the employment rate was roughly the same. So, I mean, there were jobs for different types of educational levels and experiences. There were in Sweden, of course, some regional differences, which roughly corresponded to also the unemployment rate among the Swedish population. So, where it was higher among the Swedish population in those regions, also among the Ukrainians, the unemployment was higher. Yes, but then in terms of the challenges faced, so I mean, I would say that some of those numbers are quite encouraging, but what the respondents told us was that roughly half of them said that they are working, that they're basically overqualified, so they're working in jobs that don't correspond to their level of experience and skills. Then 85% said that actually they face language barriers. I mean, even those who are employed. So either being hired because of language skills or even finding the appropriate information. There was quite a big difference between those who spoke Swedish or English and those who didn't, in terms of the rate of employment. And then another challenge that was noted was the lack of recognition of diplomas. both in regulated professions and then also basically where it's not regulated, but where still the employers may not have recognized the skill level or the diploma. And then the two more challenges, and then I stop. But there was also some that I think was it more than 40% had hoped to get more support from the employment services or get more guidance into the labor market. And then the last one was about language courses that I think there were too few, especially in the beginning. And then also when they were in general available, what was covered in those language courses was not necessarily corresponding to what is needed in the labor market or in the job. And then also the timing of the language courses was not necessary, so that if you already have a job, you could actually also continue learning the language.
Very
short, yes.
Yes, it's short, and we will come back to some of those findings as well, because I certainly have follow-up questions. But I think what's we see here with this integration of the Ukrainians is it doesn't necessarily just happen by itself, right? There has been a certain reception, but then also, I mean, activities to really focus on hiring and get these new arrivals into work. And Kaisa, I want to turn to you now from PwC, obviously a very, very big global corporation, but has taken on the responsibility to actually hire from refugees and migrants. So could you tell us a little bit about your refugee hiring program in Sweden? Why and how did PwC actually launch this program, and what type of roles have people been hired into? Oh, hold on. It's not on yet? Should we do the handheld mic, maybe, if yours is not on? Men vi kan väl använda... Nu var det.
What a cliffhanger. Wow. PwC, we do it for two reasons, I would say. One is for our business. We're getting better that way, and I'll explain why. And the other reason is that we want to be, we're a large corporation, as you said. We're global, we're big. We need, and we want to be part of solutions. Also, when it comes to sort of complex challenges in society. So, for two reasons. We get better when we get more perspectives. I don't know if you know what we do, but we're auditors, advisors, management consultants, etc. And we advise our clients on quite tricky matters and complex issues. So if we all look the same, we come from the same school, from the same country, from the same city perhaps, have the same gender, we will not be as innovative as we need to be. So it's in our DNA to find a team which is diverse. So for us, the talent pool that Karin spoke about is interesting. We need to find new talent, diverse talent. And as I said, we want to be part of a solution when it comes to for example, the refugees situation in Sweden, and not just the Ukrainians. We've done this for ages. So we've looked for diverse talents, for example, in the pool of refugees for a number of years. And we always look for organizations and partners to work with, because one of the difficult pieces is to find the right people with the right experience for us. So.
And what type of roles have people been hired into at PwC through this program?
All sorts of roles. So it's everything from finance, marketing, and also tax advisors. We've found fantastic tax advisors, for example, from the Ukraine. Also for auditors with experience from other countries, but also all different kinds of management consultants. So, and administrators, I would say also, yes.
Wonderful. And I think what I'm hearing is from PwC's standpoint, it was a very conscious decision, right, to take this step. And I think that is something that we need more and more. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe the discussions when, and I'm not sure if you were there when this program was launched, but it seems like the perception is that this is, something that might not be helpful for the company, right? But I would love to hear some of the sort of background and discussions around this program, and again how it's benefiting. You've made this conscious decision to
I think this has evolved. I've been with PwC for 20 plus years by now, getting old. So this has evolved. It's I wouldn't say it's a program, it's more in our DNA nowadays, but there was a number of conscious decisions taken along the way. So it's the leadership team, I would say, that's been in place in different times during the past 20 years. They've taken important decisions, small and large decisions along the way, that's led us to a culture and an understanding of what we need. And also the second issue, that we want to be part of solutions.
Very good. And Tobias, you mentioned, I'm going back to you, because you mentioned the skill gap, right? So high employment rates, but potentially a little bit of a skill mismatched, where many of those who might be employed feel that they are in a job that they are over-skilled for. Obviously, PwC, highly skilled jobs that they might be hired into. But could you talk a little bit more about that? What jobs are actually the Ukrainians that you surveyed doing, and what skills do they actually have, and what would they like to be doing?
From the top of my head, not so much, but I think like the survey is online, and there's actually, I think, to illustrate what I was talking about, the survey, the publication actually has two word clouds where the respondents were asked in what fields they worked before, and then in what fields they worked in Sweden. And so I think on the left side, for what they worked before, you had more managerial and engineering positions and all that. And I think on the right hand side, for what they're doing now, actually cleaner was the word that was given most often for this word cloud, and then some other more lower skilled positions.
Yeah. Very, very interesting, that mismatch, of course, and it's great that people are employed, but they should, we need these skills. Now, Karin, to follow up on this, what practical steps can companies take to be inclusive of refugees and migrants, well, in hiring and onboarding practices, etc.?
And I want to go back to 2016 when our founder and funder, Hamdi Ulukaya, the CEO of Chobani, it's a multi-billion-dollar food company in the US, an immigrant himself that came to the US and became very successful, but he also is doing well by doing good. So what Hamdi saw was that he, on the one hand, could produce really good Turkish yogurt, but he also hired people that were very important for Chobani's success and growth. So and what I wanted to say with that is that we are now a company network of 400 large employers in the world. We operate in 12 countries, and we do our work for free, thanks to our founder. And what we do is that we gather companies that are like PwC and other major companies in the world, because they have all in different ways shown how they can take practical steps to economically integrate refugees. We would love all companies to hire refugees in their companies. We would also love for them to invest in upskilling and reskilling initiatives, because we hear this is an issue all over the world. Open doors and connect refugees to work or mentor. And in Europe, we're having a large mentoring program for women. Because we talk about language, we talk about skills gap, we talk about credentials that we don't acknowledge in Sweden. We talk about contacts in Sweden. 70% of the jobs are actually appointed through contacts. So what we do at Tent, we advise companies on this. We share best practice examples. What I tend to see being very impactful in Sweden is one large company sharing how they overcame barriers with another company. Sometimes it's industry peers, you tend to get a little bit like, oops, we also have to step up. But very often it's really transparent and warm and just really helping each other out within the network. So there's so many good examples out there, and there's so many companies that have tried, failed, and then succeeded, have seen success, and we use those things. And then I also want to point out how we also introduce companies to the best NGO partners in the respective markets, and they are the people that then are connecting refugees that are looking for jobs to companies that actually have the jobs. So that's basically also something that has been very impactful to work as this intermediary between different sectors. Thank you.
Great, and I think we talked about how it can look when it works very well right now, but Kaisa, back to you. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you may have faced in this program.
There are challenges. It's not just easy. One decision that was made was that, considering the fact that PwC work in a global environment, we have the opportunity to say that we don't require everyone to speak fluent Swedish. So, but language is still one of the barriers, and it's a barrier also with us. But if you can speak English fairly well, you can talk to every Swede, I would say, and with us you can sort of perform in many roles if you can speak English. So language was one of the barriers. We've also provided sort of buddies or a friend at work that can help with both the integration at work with our company, our culture, but perhaps also some cultural training or the Swedish ways of doing things. But so we've learned along the way what we need to provide to sort of speed up the process of landing. That's maybe a Swedish conception. Landing on your 2 feet. Landing on your feet in Sweden and with us as a company. But I would say that the positive parts are so much bigger than the challenges. It's not always easy, but what we get, it's experience that others don't have, skills that others may not have, also education that others, people we find in Sweden, don't have. So we add on talent which we cannot find in the Swedish market, and for us that's worth more than the challenges that we've found, and we learn along the way so to overcome those.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen that being conscious about these decisions to integrate into the labor market is beneficial, yes, for companies, but also for society as a whole. So we've heard how this works now from PwC and also Karin, how your program works. Eva, I want to turn to you now. We've heard from the experts, we've heard positive stories about how this can work, and you are very much a success story, I would say, in terms of how you have integrated into the labor market in Sweden. But I would love to hear from you how that worked, but also how you see this from your community standpoint and what your experiences has been and the experience of your peers.
First of all, thanks for having me and thanks for listening my ideas and my opinion. The second thing is thanks to you for setting this positive example for other companies concerning employing refugees and also sharing your experience. First of all, what I'd like to say that of course there are many challenges and of course language is one of the barriers, but what I'd like to consider that, for example, according to the Common European Framework of References, the benchmark to learn Swedish language for B1 level, which is intermediate, is around 380 hours. So if you have 4 hours per week, and if you work, it will take you around 22 months. So this can be bottleneck, I do understand. And I like the example of what Beredskapslyftet did when they invited Ukrainians. They provided classes as part of the working day. And when I joined Beredskapslyftet, half of the team could speak more or less fluently Swedish, which was a good solution. Concerning Ukrainians, my experience, yeah, that's what we have. We have Ukrainian Professional Support Center conducted a survey, and the results were shown in 2024, January, as far as I remember. So, and the results are that 75% of Ukrainians who came, they have university degrees. And at that particular moment, we had 50% being employed and 50% being unemployed. And among those 50 unemployed, 91, they were looking desperately and actively for any kind of employment. So from the perspective of refugees who are looking for employment, they have a huge wish, and if there is a will, there is a way. But also, I'd like to talk from the perspective of employers. As an example, it happened in Ukraine, so I'm working with Reskilling Ukraine, and now we have the process of reintegration of war veterans. And also there was a problem how to do that. And there was a nice study or survey, an anonymous one, where employers were asked what are the objections and what stops you from employing war veterans. That was good to know what are the objections and then to address and tackle them. So maybe it could be part of the solution to know what may lead to the successful solution. And yeah, but the main thing is nowadays, if you go on any social media where Ukrainians are trying to find support, so the main question is what do you guys do to be employed? And then Ukrainians share what to do. And the first answer, as usual, which comes up is Ukrainian Professional Support Center, which provides the connection between employers and refugees. And I think that such kind of NGOs, they are really a solution, because so far as I remember, there are 6,000 of Ukrainians in the database of community, active CVs with concrete skills, what Ukrainians can do, and it can be a matching opportunity. But in case, if this is just my assumption, if an employer is not sure whether the company is ready to invite refugees, so there is another solution which is also provided by UPSC, just to have networking events. Just make the first step towards to learn more about our culture, as we also would like to learn more about Swedish culture, and it's possible only if we start mingling somehow. And I think it's like a safe environment when we can start talking to each other. Yeah, this is what I'd like to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were telling me about those networking events, and I think they're wonderful because it helps break down the sort of barriers, but also changing the perceptions, right? Because companies meet people that they see are highly skilled and can suit their company culture, then that obviously helps. I was wondering, Karen, if you wanted to comment on some of this and how that work is going through you.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because we have all touched upon different puzzle pieces that are important in this whole integration and refugee reception and labor market short skills. It's like we say in Sweden, it's like almost like a fruit salad of challenges and opportunities. I would like to share a quote from Hamdi Ilkay, the founder of Tent. He said a couple of years ago, and he still says this, that the minute a refugee get a job, they stop being a refugee. And I think that is so impactful if you think about that, and you think about, so what can I do as a company, and what can I do as an NGO? Because Eva, I think it's very important that you also highlight the importance of the support that the NGO gives to both individuals, but also sometimes authorities, organizations like ourselves, and to companies. I think it's important that we find structures. I mean, I'm obviously biased working for Tent, networks or other kinds of forums where both employers and people looking for work to some extent meet. I mean, we are a network of companies. We're not a refugee-facing organization, but we collaborate with those that meet refugee talent. So collaboration. I've heard this whole week in Almedalen, and I mean, we still need to continue do more of what we know works. But then also, I heard something. Eva and myself, we participated in an event, and there's someone said, "Don't ask yourself what I can do for Ukrainians. Ask yourself what you could do more, even more." And I think this is something we can think about for all groups, for all refugee backgrounds, right? I mean, now we have great data, which I think is fantastic to dig into. But the situation is similar for people of all refugee backgrounds. So, yes.
And I understand, Kaisa, do you want to
I
also
just wanted to
comment?
add, I think the business community can do more. NGOs are great, and as I said, we look for partners all the time to sort of get further. But also, we have at PwC, we work in Sweden. We work with about 25,000 companies, clients every year. So our network is enormous. So whatever job someone would like, if you meet one of my colleagues, they can open up their network. And just doing that, it just take 10 minutes to open that up for someone else. It's immensely impactful. And if more companies could just invite their employees to take, we give them 2 days to do activities of this kind. And the impact that gives to society is enormous if you channel it a little bit, if you help your employees a little bit to do good, to be honest. But if you're from the business community, come on, I mean, we can do so much more to get people into work and to provide a better life in Sweden.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying is very, very important. And what we see is that when the private sector comes in, it gives a different type of sort of value to what we are trying to say. We should integrate migrants and refugees, not just because it's the right thing to do, but there is actually a benefit to companies, but also society as a whole. We've now obviously focused quite a bit on the Ukrainian situation, but I wonder if we could zoom out a little bit. And Tobias, I'm going to put you on the spot here as IOM, but also as the UN. We are seeing mass displacement and mass mixed movements globally. Many people who are trying to reach Europe to seek economic opportunities, etc. And one of the things that we talk about, both as you and Sarah and IOM, is, how we can open up legal pathways for people to come to Europe, actually to meet, not because, again, it's the right thing to do to give people safety that are in need of international protection, but also because there is a need for skilled labor in Europe. I wanted to hear your perspectives on that.
Yes, it's true that this is now something that we're also trying to advance knowledge about. I think we have some promising example, not so much in the Nordic countries, but elsewhere in Europe. And I think it basically it does what we discuss here, that there is basically a need both in the labor market and then also in terms of the people needing protection or being displaced from home, basically to match those. And I think also I'm very encouraged from what I'm hearing here is I think this multi-stakeholder approach to it is probably the most promising, because if you have government and UN involved, it has more kind of that welfare perspective, and when you have the private sector, then you also bring in the business perspective, and I think that is probably the most promising to continue in that direction.
Certainly. And Eva, I want to come back to you. What more can companies do? What can we as a society here in Sweden do?
I would say that probably to start from the awareness stage, which is well known, just to start thinking about it. And again, it happened in Ukraine, and I have a concrete example. We started Reskilling Ukraine, where we deal with a huge human capital gap because you know what's happening with our men being in the front lines, and now we are entering women to become truck drivers. So, and that's particularly a hard profession and before male dominated. And the companies at first, they were a bit skeptical. Yeah, because it's just a completely new world to awareness. And then we came to the stage of consideration, like, why not? Maybe we can do that. And just today in the morning, I got maybe 25th call from another company saying, not just asking, maybe they can be good workers for us, but asking, what can we do in order to provide good environment for women to work as truck drivers? So it's changing, and I think that the first and main idea is to make a step forward, to make a step towards each other, and the main idea here from summons.
Okay, I think with that, I'm going to first open up for any questions because we're coming to the end of our panel. Do we have any questions in the audience? Yes. Do we have a microphone? Perfect. There's a lady behind you as well. I saw raise her hand first. So we'll take 2 questions and then go back to the panel.
Hi, thank you. That was really interesting. So I was thinking a little bit while you were talking about how so consistently we see this immigration anxiety polarizing countries across Europe and beyond, and a lot of it is fueled by the kind of tagline of they're stealing our jobs. When I think about it, when I speak about it, I feel that it feels such an obvious calculation of aging population, and there's also a need to deal with something that's like steadily increasing. There's obviously refugees from war, but there will be many refugees from climate crisis, etc. It's a growing trend that we know is going to happen. So I kind of wonder, like, to ask you all in general, why you think there's been such, like, it feels as though a crisis of communication about this as a solution as opposed to a problem, beyond just, I guess, racism.
Great question. We'll take one more and then we will turn back to our panel.
Thank you so much. I personally believe, or not personally believe, statistics supports it that we are probably one of the worst countries when it comes to integration or using a foreign workforce. And I'm talking about qualified in Sweden, one in Denmark, one in England. Got an offer, the Denmark one got an interview, 0 out of 10 in Sweden, while I speak Swedish. I studied in the university in Sweden. So I had one project what I was running, when was it? Before the pandemic. What I was doing was trying to find some kind of quality marking kind of structure. Let's say companies who have at least 10% of like at a manager level, utom europeiska bakgrund, for example, and then 30% of women in general in leadership will have some kind of jämlikhet markering. So that you guys who do the job, like Salesforce has been doing an amazing job, for example, who would do the job would get a benefit. You're not punishing them, in a sense, but you are benefiting in terms of contracts or people who want to deal with you. So I would really love to hear your view on this concept and if you think it's something to go with. Yeah.
Another good question. Who wants to start? Yeah, Tobias?
Well, actually, I don't have an answer to where this comes from, or I don't want to speculate in public about where the shift comes from. But maybe in terms of, well, solutions, or at least an approach, is what we now, I mean, always, but now recently more are talking about is evidence-based policy making. And I think you can also talk maybe about evidence-based public discussions. And actually, when I prepared for this panel, I read some very interesting studies on how public opinion on integration and the actual integration indicators don't always match. So that it's quite often people have a more negative, I mean, when you ask people, has integration in the labor market improved? When there's a certain political discourse, they would say that it hasn't, even though the numerical indicators show that more immigrants are integrated in the labor market. Or then the other very interesting part is that on the local level, people usually say that in their own environment, integration is working better, but on the national level, you know, in general, they may say that it's gotten worse. So, and I think for that, it's not always easy, and the numbers are not always that accessible for everyone. But I think that is one approach to address some of those problems, to basically go back to the evidence, because we have a lot of evidence, and you don't have to make decisions and policies based only on emotions and feelings.
Karin, you wanted to comment?
I wanted to comment on this. Tent conducted a consumer perception study in Sweden January 2023, I do think that the findings are still accurate, but I do want to flag that. We did it in Sweden, we did it in other European countries. In Sweden, we asked 800 recipients of, respondents of all political views, so to say. And I have to say that what struck me is that over 51% of the Swedish consumers are actually positive towards companies hiring refugees. So this is something for companies to think about. That, like, we have heard that it's the right thing to do. It's good for you, for business, etc., etc. But it has also to do with how attractive are you as an employer? How do you retain talent that are already working for you? How do you attract new talent? Because we want to work for companies that has a purpose, and the refugee situation is something that is affecting us all, right? That's the one thing. Second, if you can boost your brand, if you can, I mean, it is important today. Environment is important, but also this social impact issues is important. So there is data out there. It's not so accessible, but I do think also that's one of the things that we do. We try to look at things from a data perspective, because that's also how you can explain this. And I also think that asking people of different political views, I think it's important, and this is my own analysis, that in Sweden, one thing that we can agree on, no matter what kind of political party you're voting for, is that we want people in Sweden to work and to contribute back to Sweden by paying taxes. So, yeah. Someone else in another panel said today, just do it. I mean, we're so many people here to support from different perspectives, supporting companies, supporting the refugees, etc. So yeah, just do it.
Kaisa, Eva, any further comments? Any other questions?
Not really. I think I'm not entitled to answer that question.
Kaisa?
I could just add to what Karin said. Our people that are already employed by us, they expect us to keep looking for diverse talents. And it's not just ethnic background, it's all sorts of different backgrounds and etc. So it's definitely an expectation from our people, and we cannot disappoint them. So build your culture and you will get more talent, I would say. But I'm sorry to hear about your lack of interviews in Sweden.
Yeah, that is not okay. Now, we are quickly running out of time. I'm going to see if there are any further questions from the audience. Yes.
Can I just add on the same situation, because I actually came from Russia originally, and I came through a university on a student visa, and then I applied for a different type of visa, which was like a visitor researcher, and it's been 2 years since I've been in discussion with Migrationsverket back and forth. They don't want to give me a visa as a Russian, and I cannot get hired because companies do not know how to hire you while you're waiting for the permit. And a lot of people are in the situation of like not actually having the valid permit, and then being highly qualified does not help you at all, because they're like, we don't know what to do with this. Just wait for the permit to be valid.
Yeah. So it seems that there is another question here from the audience, maybe a comment on.
Yeah, rather a reflection. My name is Anastasia, and I'm a project leader for Ukrainian Professional Support Center. And I'm a colleague of Eva, and we have already recruited over 600 people matched to work in Sweden. And we cooperate pretty much with both TENT, very closely with PwC. But my reflection, generally, maybe it's one of the last of my panels that I will listen to in Almedalen, that I think that what we lack as a perspective is those who are actually not on board with us. And my takeaway also from these discussions is like, we have all those insights, we have the tools, we have the methodology, we have the success stories. We have great role models when it comes to the companies, we have the data, but what we don't have is the dialogue with those, what Eva mentioned in the beginning, why, not like shaming other companies, why don't you do it? Or like shaming people, why are you not supporting, more people getting into the companies and labor market, but rather saying, let's invite them to the discussion. It comes both to the politics as integration questions, but I think that we who are together in this camp of like support, we need to invite people openly, organizations, companies, with a perspective. Let's learn from each other. And the same way with the, be it Ukrainian refugee, it's going to be so many more crises in the world when it comes to people moving to Sweden from different regions. And we need to be prepared, and we can only be prepared by understanding their perspective as early as possible. I think our success factor was that we had Ukrainians who came from the war, and from day one they were the one recruiting, the one matching people, the one communicating with them. Because if you don't have that internal power inside, you cannot really help others. So my kind of takeaway and inspiration for next year, Almedalen, is that we invite broader number of stakeholders, and after the discussions that inspire us so much, we also sit down and actually act on things. So sorry for this long comment.
No, I think that's very good, Helena. If you don't take that, and I think that is a call to action for all of us. We shouldn't embark on this work because it's simply the right thing to do, which of course it is, but also there is a benefit to all of us. Before we close, I'm going to turn back to the panel for some final words. Eva, maybe I'll start on your end, and we'll work our way.
Yeah, it's just my wish, I would say, and my call to action to employers, just to have skills before the word refugee.
Great. Kaisa, any final words?
I'll have to add to what Anastasia said, which is cooperation. I think that is important for everyone, both for the refugees and for the companies and for the NGOs. We need to find new ways. Things are moving so fast, and we all need to move fast as well if we want to do better next time.
Tobias?
People would think that this is scripted, but I had something similar but related, and that's actually related to the second last question. I think it's what we're talking about now in terms of government is that for migration, the whole of government approach is needed much more than before, or this realization that migration leads into a lot of other areas. So, for example, in this case, it does make a lot of sense that the Ministry of Employment says we have a lack of qualified workers, and the migration agency is wondering, can we issue a visa, and so that also kind of everyone follows kind of the same philosophy in that. So I think also the cooperation, but also within the government.
Yeah, 100%. And finally, Karin?
Yeah, I thank you for raising that perspective, Anastasia, because I think we need to have role models. We have to have good examples. We have to show that. We also have to talk about what was hard and how we overcome barriers, but also, like you say, not shame and blame, but to support and advise and just team up together and then show that it is possible. So I definitely believe in that. So thank you.
Wonderful. All right. With that, I want to say thank you very much to the audience and also the panel. Thank you very much.
Ja, foto.